This is my full 2025 college football playoff prediction. Okay, so let's go to the top of the bracket and work our way down, starting with the number one overall seed, Notre Dame. I think they're going to go 12-0. They're going to take care of business in Miami. They have a tough starting schedule and a much more challenging schedule than they did last season, but I think that they're a better team. I think that many of their strongest players, including Jeremiah Love, have been through the ringer of last season, understand what it takes to get to the national championship, and I think that they're going to take that into the season and bring along players like CJ Carr that need a little bit of coaching up to get to that level. I think that they will all get to that level eventually and go 12-0. And they're going to be one of the teams that we're following this season. If you're interested in Notre Dame, make sure that you subscribe because we're going to be following teams like Notre Dame and the second team, South Carolina, who I think is going to be the SEC champion through the season. Each and every week, we're going to give a touch-in on what they're doing, and that's how we're going to go through this college football season, including some of the other big stuff that happens outside of those teams. But Notre Dame and South Carolina will definitely be on our list for 2025. Speaking of South Carolina, like I said, I think they're going to be the number 2 overall seed. They're going to be the SEC champs. I think they're going to go 12-1 with their only loss on the road at LSU. I think that they have 2 of the best players, not only in the SEC, but in the country, with Lenora Sellers and Dylan Sampson. I think that Lenora Sellers is primed for a Heisman Trophy in 2025. I think if he doesn't get injured last season and lose some of those snaps, that he was probably in line for at least a Heisman finalist run last season. And I think that South Carolina maybe could have ended up with 1 loss because they definitely could have beat LSU if he didn't get hurt in that game. And Alabama, they lose by 2 points, and if he had those snaps to get ready for that game, I think that he definitely would lead them to victory there. But either way, they had a super strong season last year. I think that yet again they're going to win the Palmetto Bowl at the end of the season, and they're going to prove to not just be a one-year wonder. They're going to prove to be better than those Spurrier teams they had in the early 2010s, and they're going to actually get to the playoff and have one of their best seasons in program history. Number 3, we've got Ohio State, the defending national champions. I think they're going to go 12-1. They're going to win the Big Ten championship this season, and their only loss is going to be at the end of the season against Michigan. I think that they haven't got over those demons, even with the national championship win. I think they're going to go for 5 straight losses because Michigan's going to be a better team this season, and they're just not showing up in those games. But regardless of that, I think that they will be a first-round bye. I think they will be the best team in the Big Ten. I think that they're going to take care of business in probably the biggest non-conference game, maybe of the 20th century, when Texas comes to Ohio State, to Columbus, week 1. I think that they have a big advantage with Arch Manning, being this, heir apparent. This is still his first real start. This is still his first time he has to prove that he can lead Texas to victory. And doing that on the road against 100,000 fans is going to be extremely difficult, and I think that Ohio State, all things equal, is a more talented team than Texas at the end of the day. So I think that Ohio State will take care of business outside of the Michigan game and get the first round bye that they did not get last season. And our 4th and final first round bye is going to be Clemson. I think that they're going to be the ACC champs. They're going to go 12-1 outside of that loss, like I talked about in the Palmetto Bowl against South Carolina. They're going to be the only team of the ACC that could possibly get a first round bye. So the ACC really needs Clemson to take care of business this season. They're the number 1 returning production. They bring back Cade Klubnik to lead their offense. Tons of players all over their defense. They're going to have tons of first-round picks this upcoming NFL draft. So I think that they're really going to show that you can still recruit and progress within a program as opposed to going in the transfer portal. Not that there's anything bad with the transfer portal, but I think that Clemson is doing it their way, and this season will prove that even if there's a little bit of a down run, if you take that path, you can still do it in 2025. Next, we're going to go to the 4 teams that are going to host a first-round college football playoff game. We'll start with number 5. I think that's going to be Penn State. They will host another college football playoff game in 2025. This time, they're going to be the 5th seed. They're going to go 11-2 with 2 losses to Ohio State, once in the regular season, once in the Big Ten championship game. Yet again, the Big Ten runner-up. And that's the question with Penn State, right? They're bringing back probably their most talented team of all time, even more talented than last season. They bring back Aller. They bring back the backfield. A lot of people across their defense, maybe outside of Abdul Carter, but still, they reload. They are progressing within the program. But are they going to be able to win games when they're not favored? That's been the story of the James Franklin era. To be honest, it's championship or bust for Penn State in 2025. You're not going to end the program. You're not going to fire James Franklin. But if you can't win it in 2025, when will you ever win it? That's the question. Georgia, number 6. Georgia, I believe, is going to go 11-2 this season. I think their only loss in the regular season is actually going to be against Florida. I just think that Florida is a very talented team with a very tough schedule, and they're going to get one big win this season. I think it's going to be against Georgia in the greatest outdoor cocktail party. I do think that Georgia's going to make it to the SEC championship game, and they will lose there against South Carolina. They're going to have a very strong team this season. I think that they're going to find a way to run the ball this season, which they were unable to do last season, which caused a lot of Carson Beck trying to be the best player on the field, throwing a ton of picks. I think that they're going to be able to take that pressure off of Gunnar Stockton this season, win the way that Kirby Smart likes to win, running the ball, having the best defense in the country. Maybe not the best defense in the country, but they're going to be up there. And I think that they'll find a way to get 11 wins and get a first-round bye. Next, we've got number 7, Oregon. I think that Oregon might not have it all the way together early on in the season like they did last season. They struggled out of the gates last season. Getting a new quarterback in, this is going to be maybe even more challenging, although Dante Moore might have a higher ceiling than Dylan Gabriel, which is saying something because Dylan Gabriel is one of the all-time greats, even if he played 7 seasons in college football. But Dante Moore doesn't have that experience. He has had more time in the program, but he doesn't have the experience that Dylan Gabriel has throughout the country. So I think that there's going to take a little bit more time to get going. They do have an easier schedule the first 3 weeks, but then, of course, they have to go on the road to play Penn State. That's where I think their loss will be. I think that's going to be enough to keep them out of the Big Ten championship game. But if you look at their schedule, other than that, they play Indiana and USC. They should be able to win all those games. They're playing, one top-tier Big Ten team and then all mid-tier. Even if they don't go to the Big Ten championship game, they'll get a first-round bye. I think they'll be at the number 7 seed. Hopefully they go a little bit higher, but that's what I think. And really, as a Ducks fan, I just want a college football playoff game in Eugene. I will pay so much money. My wife might divorce me how much money I'm going to pay to get to the college football playoff if they play it in Eugene. Last but not least, the last team that will be hosting a college football playoff game in 2025, I believe, will be Alabama. They're going to go 10-2 with losses at Georgia and at South Carolina as well. Either way, they're going to lose to Georgia and South Carolina. I think that's a great season for Alabama. They need to not just get in the playoff, but firmly get in the playoff in 2025 to prove that they can win without Nick Saban. Kellen DeBoer took over one of the best jobs in the country and one of probably the worst job in the country because you have to go there and win. Following up Nick Saban at Alabama, that is not an enviable position. They couldn't pay a lot of coaches enough money to go there. They definitely wanted Dan Lanning. They could not pay him enough money to go there. Not that he doesn't get paid well at Oregon, but they could have paid him gobs and gobs of money to go to Alabama, but he didn't want to follow up Nick Saban. That's a no-win situation. However, I think Kellen DeBoer can take the talent that he has on that team, guide him to college football playoff first-round home game, maybe get a win, maybe not, but either way, it's a victory of a season. It'll get him a little bit off the hot seat and start to build maybe his own version of Alabama in the coming seasons. All right, next let's do the 4 teams that are going to be on the road in the first round, the final 4 teams in the playoff, as well as our one team that's on the outside looking in. Starting with number 9, Alabama or LSU. I think they're going to take on Alabama in the first round. They're going to be 10-2. They're going to lose to Clemson on the first week of the season, and then they're going to lose to Alabama later on in the season. They're going to get a chance for a rematch in the first round on the road at Alabama. I think the LSU has a great team. They got Nussmeier. They've got a lot of talent. I don't know if it's a national championship season, but I don't think it's a national championship or bust. I think it's get to the college football playoff, prove that you are still one of the top programs in the SEC, even with Texas and Oklahoma being added. And that's enough for Brian Kelly to keep his job. And I think he does enough to keep his job. That's what Brian Kelly does. He does enough to keep his job. Enough to be like, is he one of the best coaches in the country? And then he has a couple seasons where you're like, no, he sucks. And then he's like, wait, is he the best coach in the country? One of the best coaches in the country? And this is one of those, is he one of the best coaches in the country? Seasons at LSU. Next, number 10, Texas Tech. I think they're going to be the Big 12 champs. They're going to go 12-1 with their one loss on the road at Kansas State, who I think is one of the many talented teams in the Big 12, which makes it very hard to predict. Texas Tech, as well as Oregon, are going to be the 2 other teams that we're going to follow closely in 2024. So Notre Dame, South Carolina, Oregon, and Texas Tech. If you're interested in those teams in 2025, make sure that you subscribe and are along for the ride because it's going to be a fun season. But I think that Texas Tech will, with all the talent they brought in, $20 million in the transfer portal, the number 1 or number 2 transfer portal class with LSU, depending on where you look, they're going to come into the season and they're going to take care of business. It might take them a little bit to get going, but they have a schedule that allows them to take a little bit to get going. The biggest thing is, can they beat Arizona State when Arizona State visits in week 7, week 8? That is the most important game of the season in the Big 12. Underratedly, one of the most important games of the season in the country, because it is definitely going to go a long way improving and selecting the Big 12 champion who will be represented in the college football playoff. I think that they're actually going to beat Arizona State twice. They're going to beat them at home, and they're going to beat them in Dallas in the Big 12 championship game. And they're going to get a first-round game against Oregon at Oregon. They can come to Autzen and see what this West Coast is all about. Speaking of the West Coast, number 11, we've got Boise State. I think they'll go 12-1 with their one loss on the road to Notre Dame, I think, in week 5. That's going to be a very tough game, and they're not getting that advantage of the first week of the season or the second week of the season, which Boise State knows how to win those games. As an Oregon fan, I know about Boise State knowing how to win those games. Even last season, they almost beat Oregon on the road. I just don't think they have enough to beat Notre Dame this year. If they had Genty from last season, maybe they could, but they're still going to be a very strong team, by far the strongest G5 team. They'll be the Mountain West champs. They will be the representative for the G5, and they will take on Georgia in the first round on the road at Georgia, which will be a crazy game. Boise State on the road at Georgia is a very exciting premise for a college football playoff game. Lastly, number 12, out of the Big Ten, Michigan, 2023 national champions, will make it back to the college football playoff in 2025. They will lose. They'll go 10-2. They will lose early on the road to Oklahoma in Bryce Young's first road start. It's going to be a very tough game, but they will come back. They will then lose another game on the road at USC. It's going to look rough, but they're going to work their way back. And the game this season, is it the big game or the game? I think it's just the game against Ohio State. It will prove that regular season games still matter in college football, because the team that I have on the outside looking in at number 13 is 10-2 Texas, who I believe will lose to Ohio State and Georgia, 2 playoff teams. And it'll set up for an argument at the end of the season of Michigan, Texas, both 10-2 with one common opponent, or 2 common opponents. They're going to have 2 common opponents. It'll be Oklahoma. It'll be Ohio State. It'll be a very interesting discussion at the end of the season. If Michigan beats Ohio State at home, where Texas loses to them on the road, and Texas beats Oklahoma in a neutral site rivalry game where Michigan goes down to Oklahoma and loses, what do they value more? I think at the end of the day, Michigan will win that. If you start to put those comparisons in, Michigan will win that, because a win against Ohio State, who will be a first-round bye team, is going to be valued over a loss at Georgia. That's what it's going to come down to. Michigan will win that and find their way back into the playoff in 2025, and they'll take on Penn State on the road in the first round. Okay, we got the bracket set, so let's just go through it. We've been building it. It's on the screen now. Let's start from the top here. Michigan versus Penn State. Penn State at home in Happy Valley. I think that they're going to be able to pull this one off. I think that they will be favored. I think that they will be a little bit better than Michigan this season, and I think that they'll find a way to pull off this first-round matchup. But this is an amazing game. Michigan at Penn State in the first round of the playoff. This is what they want from the first round playoff. They really messed it up last season by fucking up the seedings and all that. But this season, I think that we're going to get the matchups that you're really looking for in the first round of a 12-team playoff. This is quintessential. Speaking of quintessential, let's take a step down. 8-9, LSU, Alabama. This is a classic SEC rivalry, a rematch from early on in the season. I think that LSU is going to come back. They're going to avenge their loss from earlier on in the season. They're going to go on the road to Alabama for the second time of the season, knock off Alabama, and move on to the second round to play Notre Dame. Next, we have not the most intriguing, but still a amazing game. Boise State on the road at Georgia. That's the stuff that we're talking about. Can Boise State bring the Idaho Magic on the road to Georgia and find some way, some David and Goliath way to knock off Georgia? I don't think that they can. I think Georgia is going to be too strong on the lines. I think that's what it comes down to, right? That's been the classic story about the SEC against the West Coast, or even the Big Ten against the West Coast up until last season, is just the lines are going to be too strong. I think that's going to ring true. Georgia's going to move on and play Ohio State in the second round. And then finally, we got Oregon versus Texas Tech. We'll call it the Bucky Barracks Bowl. Two teams that I will be following through the season. We got a couple Bucky Barracks Bowls that could potentially line up. I think that Oregon's going to prevail here. I think Texas Tech has a very talented team, but Oregon is just another level. I think that probably LSU is like the cutoff of top blue bloods here. Obviously, Michigan, definitely has that talent, but they're still working in a new program under Sharon Moore. But Oregon is a different level than Texas Tech, and they'll move on to play South Carolina in the second round. And so let's go to the top, back to the top, and go with Penn State versus Clemson. Now, this is what we're talking about with Penn State, right? They're going to be probably Orange Bowl here. This is what we're talking about with Penn State. They need to be able to win a game as an underdog, and they're probably mostly on the road. Penn State's going to travel very well, but it's not 110,000 fans in Happy Valley. They're going down to Miami, pretty close to South Carolina, pretty close to Clemson. I think that Clemson's going to be able to pull this one off. I think they got too much talent coming back. I would take Klubnik over Aller. Obviously, we'll see this season, but and I think that the Clemson's defense is just going to be a little bit too much for Penn State. They'll move on to the semifinal to take on the winner of LSU Notre Dame. Now, this one is interesting. Where do you put Notre Dame? They're the number 1 overall seed. You've got Texas, Miami, LA, or what? We got the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans. Now, if you put them in New Orleans, they're going to play an SEC team in the South as the number 1 overall seed. Do you put them in the Rose Bowl? Because Notre Dame probably has more fans in LA than anybody here besides maybe Oregon. Oregon doesn't even have fans in LA. They just have fans that would move down there or fly down there. Or do you put them in Texas? I think this game ends up in the Rose Bowl. I think Notre Dame will pull it off. I think that Notre Dame is just too strong this season. I think that their running game is too strong and their defense is going to be too strong. I think that CJ Carr will be enough. And if he's not enough, Minchie will be enough. They'll figure it out. They won't be afraid to make the switch this season because they know this is the one to win it. They're going to be a great program for years to come under Marcus Freeman, but this is the one to win it. You don't play with your food. They'll take care of business in the second round against LSU, move on to the semifinal for a matchup against Clemson. Next, Georgia and Ohio State. I think Ohio State got so much momentum from a first-round victory at home, club in Tennessee, a team that was severely overmatched against Ohio State in the first round. Ohio State should not have been the 8th seed. Whatever stupidity they put together last season, Ohio State should not have been the 8th seed and somehow matched up against a team that they were going to overpower, and then they were going to take that momentum and bring it to the Rose Bowl with Chip Kelly on the sideline, yada, yada, yada. They don't have the coordinators they had last season. That, I think, is going to be their pitfall. Relying on Matt Patricia in a big spot, relying on Brian Hartline, a first-year true offensive coordinator, play caller. I don't think they're going to be able to hold off Georgia in a game that probably is, the Cotton Bowl? You're probably going to put this game in the Cotton Bowl and then the South Carolina game in the Sugar Bowl. I don't think that Ohio State's going to hold off Georgia. This is unfortunately where the northern teams are going to be at a disadvantage in the second round because, of course, they want to play these games in the South. So, Georgia moves on and awaits the winner of Oregon, South Carolina. Now, you might be tempted to call me a homer, and I might be. But I think this game that will take place in the Sugar Bowl, South Carolina, Oregon, maybe this will be the Orange Bowl. Maybe this will be the Orange Bowl. Clemson will be the Sugar Bowl because South Carolina is projected to be the higher seed here. So maybe this will be the Orange Bowl. I think that Oregon, they're on a mission this year. They're underrated. They got a little bit of an easier schedule. It might take them a little bit longer to get going. But I think that Dante Moore and DeCorian Moore are going to come out of the gates, and they're going to prove that Oregon is something to be reckoned with in 2025 and beyond. I think that Dan Lanning, his 4th season as Oregon head coach, 4th season as head coach anywhere, is going to prove that he is one of the best coaches in the country, if not the best coach in the country, up and coming. Take care of business against South Carolina, move on for a matchup against Georgia, his former team, his former head coach, Kirby Smart. I think that Oregon will be moving on to the semifinals to take on Georgia. Okay, and now we got the semifinals. 4 teams left: Clemson, Notre Dame, Georgia, Oregon. Let's start with Clemson, Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame is going to take care of business here. I think that Clemson is an extremely talented team. They technically bring back the most returning production, but Notre Dame bring back dogs from a team that went to the national championship game. I don't think that's anything to sneeze at. Yes, Clemson as a program has been there somewhat recently, but none of these players have been there. Notre Dame has been there. They've taken care of business. They will be back in the national championship game in 2026 in Miami, and they'll take on the winner of Georgia and Oregon. And in that game, I think that Dante Moore has a higher ceiling than Gunnar Stockton. I think he's going to show up. I think that Ali Sadiq is going to take care of business. I think Mekhi Hughes is going to be one of the best transfers in the country. The offensive line with 3 transfers, Isaiah World, Alex Harkey, they're going to put it all together, and they're going to be what Oregon should have been last season. They're going to go to the national championship game. Oregon, Notre Dame. We're going to get the Bucky Barracks Bowl. Texas Tech, Oregon. South Carolina, Oregon. And the national championship, Notre Dame, Oregon. And I'm not going to make you wait for it. I'm going to tell you who's winning the national championship. The Oregon Ducks are winning the national championship in 2025. They're winning the game in 2026. They're going to take it home to Eugene, the first national championship in Oregon history. And they're going to prove the Ducks are here to stay. And there's not a damn thing you can do about it. Thanks for watching that video. I hope that you liked it. Make sure that you like and subscribe. If you made it this far, leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Are you excited about the teams that we will be following this season? Notre Dame, South Carolina, Texas Tech, and Oregon. Do you think I'm wrong about the Ducks winning the national championship in 2025? And if so, leave it below, but you're wrong. Other than that, if you want to watch more of my videos, I do have those for you. Over here, I got my video that I did last week, which is my college football playoff tiers. So check that one out if you want more of a wide view of who I think has any kind of a chance to make the college football playoff. Up here, I've got my most popular video, my college football realignment for 2030, a realistic realignment. Check that one out. A lot of people in the comment section on that one, but I do think it's a great video. Other than that, I've got my subscribe link on this side, and we will catch you next time. 2 videos a week from here on out. We'll check you next time. See ya!